Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to put on our historical investigator hats today to decode, honestly, one of the absolute biggest philosophical paradigm shifts in all of human history, the Upanishads. Think of this as a masterclass on ancient intellectual disruption. If you've ever wondered how early societies transitioned from literal, outward rituals to highly sophisticated inward psychological frameworks, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to act as executives of our own minds. We'll unpack the strategic vision of these late Vedic texts and explore how they literally altered both Eastern and Western thought forever.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the origins of the Upanishads, the shift from ritual to introspection, Atman, Brahman, and Maya, the four great sayings, the schools of Vedanta, and finally their massive global philosophical legacy. Let's dive in.
Section 1. Origins of the Upanishads.
You know, the etymology of the word itself is just fascinating. It comes from the Sanskrit roots upa, meaning by, and nishad, which means sit down. It frames the entire text not as some dogmatic, top-down lecture, but actually as an intimate transfer of secret knowledge. Just imagine a promising student sitting right at the feet of a seasoned guru, engaged in the absolute highest level of intellectual mentorship. This wasn't public knowledge, right? It was an exclusive, esoteric doctrine meant to finally put ignorance to rest.
Now, dating these texts is notoriously difficult. In fact, the scholar Patrick Olivelle even compared the effort to building a house of cards. But mapping out the principal text chronologically shows a centuries-long evolution of thought. We see the Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya texts emerging as early as the 7th or 6th centuries BCE. And this timeline really illustrates that the Upanishads weren't just a single, sudden revelation. No, they were a slow, deliberate development of ideas unfolding over almost a millennium.
Geographically speaking, this massive intellectual revolution took place in the frontier region of ancient Brahmanism in northern India. And rather than one single author, these works were diverse, multi-author compilations deeply embedded within the older Vedas. But here's what's particularly striking and frankly completely radical for the era. It's who was doing the talking. Because alongside inspired sages like Yajavalkya, the texts feature prominent female philosophical debaters like Gargi and Maitreya, actively shaping the discourse. How cool is that?
Moving into Section 2, From Ritual to Introspection.
Think of this as the ultimate organizational pivot. The older Vedic tradition relied heavily on external physical sacrifices. Literally offering oblations to the gods to secure material benefits. But the Upanishads, they radically disrupted this entirely. They argued that true spiritual autonomy comes from internal self-knowledge and meditation, not outward mechanical compliance. The Kaushitaki Upanishad explicitly declared that external rituals like the morning and evening Agnihotram must be replaced with the inner Agnihotram, basically a ritual of introspection. They took the old, rigid practices and made them beautifully allegorical.
And the crucial takeaway here is that this inward turn sparked an enduring ethical framework. Think about it. When you stop looking outward for salvation, you start really examining your own behavior. The Chandogya Upanishad provides one of the earliest known declarations of ahimsa, or non-violence. So alongside Dhamma, meaning self-restraint, and Satya, meaning truthfulness, this massive shift away from ritual animal sacrifice actually laid the groundwork for an ethical code centered entirely on compassion and personal responsibility.
All right, Section 3, Atman, Brahman, and Maya. First up is the Atman. Essentially, this is the absolute core of who you are beneath your physical body, beneath your job titles, and way beneath your daily stresses. To truly govern the executive branch of your own mind, you have to recognize this eternal life force or consciousness that animates you. It is your true self, the ultimate subjective reality.
Next is Brahman. So if Atman is the ultimate reality within, Brahman is the supreme immortal reality without. It is the basic essence of the entire cosmos, existing far, far beyond the reach of ordinary human perception or thought. It's the objective foundation of literally all things.
And finally, there's Maya. Now, Maya is frequently mistranslated simply as illusion, which makes it sound like life is just some fake hallucination. But it's so much more nuanced than that. As the scholar Wendy Doniger notes, Maya doesn't mean the universe is unreal. It means it is not what it seems to be. It acts as a sort of veil of perceived reality that is constantly distracting us, obscuring our ability to recognize that profound underlying connection between our inner Atman and the universal Brahman.
Section 4. The Four Great Sayings.
So how exactly do we bridge the gap between the individual self and the cosmos?
Well, the Upanishads synthesize this incredibly complex philosophy into these super concise statements. These 4 executive summaries, if you will, known as the Mahavakyas, or great sayings, are used to establish the ultimate scriptural identity between the inner self and universal reality. Take That Thou Art from the Chandogya Upanishad, for example. It is a direct, bold statement that the individual and the infinite are ultimately one and the same. And these quotes became the foundational pillars for centuries of intense philosophical debate in India.
Section 5. The Schools of Vedanta.
Now, just as modern leaders can look at the exact same core data and derive entirely different strategies, ancient philosophers drew incredibly distinct conclusions from the Upanishads. Adi Shankara's Advaita school argued for pure non-dualism, that Atman and Brahman are completely identical, and any perceived difference is just Maya playing tricks on us. Then you have Ramanuja's Vishishtadvaita, which argued for qualified monism, meaning the soul is similar in quality to Brahman but quantitatively distinct, kind of like a single cell within a larger body. And finally, Madhvacharya's Dvaita school asserted absolute dualism, arguing they are entirely separate realities. It's fascinating. One source text, 3 entirely different philosophical conclusions.
What is also really fascinating is how these texts were used to draw the battle lines between entirely different traditions. Adi Shankara actually utilized these specific Upanishadic interpretations to philosophically separate Hinduism from Buddhism, because while the Upanishads assume the undeniable existence of the Atman, an eternal soul, Buddhism investigates the mind empirically and finds absolutely no evidence of a permanent self, which led to their famous doctrine of no soul or Atman.
This brings us to Section 6. Global Philosophical Legacy. The global transmission of these texts was basically a monumental historical relay race. First, Mughal Emperor Akbar's great-grandson Darashuko translated 50 Upanishads from Sanskrit into Persian back in 1656. Then, centuries later, a French Orientalist received that manuscript and translated it into Latin in 1801. And it was this Latin version, called the Upanishad, that finally, after all those years, brought Upanishadic thought to the eager minds of 19th-century European scholars. And one of those eager minds was the renowned German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. He was so struck by their wisdom that he literally kept a copy of that Latin translation by his side at all times. Just listen to his own words to get a sense of his enthusiasm. In the whole world, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. It has been the solace of my life, it will be the solace of my death. He saw his own philosophical concept of a fundamental underlying will perfectly mirrored in the Upanishads' profound description of Brahman.
Now, while some historians love to draw links between early Greek thought and the Upanishads, there is a really critical difference here. Classical Platonic thought, while definitely interested in the soul, was heavily rooted in this life, mostly aiming to develop the ideal, just political state. The Upanishads, by contrast, focused almost entirely on the individual's inner journey. The goal wasn't the perfect society, the aim was ultimate self-knowledge and personal liberation, or moksha, completely regardless of whatever political structure was happening outside.
I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder long after this explainer ends. We've seen how the Upanishads totally shifted human focus from outward rituals to the profound depths of inner consciousness. So, if these ancient texts are right, and the absolute essence of reality isn't out there in the external world, but is sitting right at the center of your own consciousness, what layer of Maya is currently distracting you? Thank you so much for joining us, and keep